a boat was found in Sorrento. At the time you were there, it was in your Greenleaf. Sunk with blood stains. Naturally, when you were missing as far as we knew, we thought it might have been your blood.
Mine? Did Dickie not tell you I saw him after San Remo? I brought him some of his things from Atrani.
Atrani? My wife is from Atrani.
Is she?
Yes. A beautiful place, but too many stairs.
Yeah.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to a mini-sode. Chris Bagg and I are doing a scheduling Zoom where we're scheduling all sorts of exciting upper middle brow things for the future. And
yes, we are really pulling back the curtain, everybody. You get to hear us schedule stuff.
We've already done the scheduling. You don't get to hear it. It's a secret.
We're not. Oh, that's not the mini-sode?
No, it's not a scheduling mini-sode. I just feel like there should be a most boring podcast ever competition, and we could submit that. That would be.
I think even a scheduling episode of us, we wouldn't end up at the bottom of the most boring. Maybe that would be I don't know, C-SPAN recap the scheduling episode.
C-SPAN recap the scheduling or scheduling the C-SPAN recap.
That kind of sounds just like C-SPAN.
Yeah, man. No, I don't know. I have heard we don't have a huge audience, but what I hear from our audience that we have, what I have heard is that we are charming talking about nearly anything. So the 36 people out there who are downloading our podcast would probably enjoy the scheduling episode, especially since we would fill it with quips and wry observations, and baseball. Chris Bagg and I, by the way, had texting exchange about a baseball player's split finger changeup grip this morning, which just in the middle of all the other things we're doing, we have to text about baseball.
And did you see him, the way he holds the ball? Completely insane.
Yeah, but it reminds me. So the regular split finger grip is just one finger over. And it reminds me of Greg Maddox's changeup grip, where he basically takes a fastball grip, but he uses these two fingers instead of these two fingers, and that's it. He just grips it like that and throws it the exact same way. That's his changeup. It's he said it's
and then you probably don't have as much power if you're using your middle finger and your ring finger, and that's why you get.
He says I throw it just like my fastball. And it has a little. You also, because those two fingers have different strength, you get a little spin, and so his changeup has a slight lateral motion to it in addition to the But it's just pinpoint control. He has pinpoint control, and he's really smart about how he throws it. But anyway, this is now the 19th episode in which we've talked about Greg Maddox.
Yeah.
Welcome to the Greg Maddox podcast.
In the sort of the index of upper middle brow, it goes Larry Niven, Greg Maddox.
Yeah, Larry Niven. Is there someone else in there? I feel like we got someone else too, but yeah, they're right up there. Chekhov,
Patricia Highsmith,
Chekhov makes it quite a bit. Stevenson, but that doesn't really count because we recapped a lot of his books. But
we quote luxuriated in Stevenson.
We dove deep. Maybe we can get Greg Maddox on the show.
Oh my God.
He shows up for a lot of interviews and things like that. I don't know what he would talk about. Joe Madden, the former Cubs manager, who's now managing. Is he managing the Padres now or something? But he's the manager who led them to the 2016 World Series. He has a podcast, and he's kind of an intellectual. He's a nerd. He's a book guy. Maybe we can get Joe Madden on.
Oh, that'd be amazing.
But anyway, mini-sode, the topic, maybe we'll leave some of that stuff in. We have two topics, and one is a topic you raised this morning over text about the resemblance of Inspector Ravini to another fictional detective. Do you want to say more about that?
Yeah, we both. One thing I really like about our last episode is we seem to converge without talking about it on the fact that elements of Ripley were kind of sliding into farcical, and we both kind of arrived at the Pink Panther, I think, of our own accord. And then as I was putting together the tile, this morning I found a bunch of stills of Peter Sellers playing Inspector Clouseau, and my God, he looks uncannily like Inspector Ravini. And I sort of shared a few with you, and here we are. And we both have a real affection for the Pink Panther movies and Peter Sellers. Completely brilliant. That kind of comedy and sort of that kind of cult of personality comedy, it kind of exists these days, but not in the same way. And I also feel without the kind of classical physical comedy that Peter Sellers and Charlie Chaplin and people like that really did an absolutely amazing job.
I think that maybe Tyler Perry and Eddie Murphy will do that. Ben Stiller and Jack Black kind of do that physical humor. Like Zoolander has a sort of similar thing.
Jim Carrey.
Yeah, for sure. Jim Carrey.
Yeah, the comics who are also athletes. Athletes with their body and their face, and that they really can create a world with their physicality.
Yeah, although I would say that Jim Carrey is great. I would actually say that Peter Sellers is also capable of acting in a way that Jim Carrey occasionally does. I don't want to say, like, Jim Carrey was good in, was it Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind? Like, he was legit. When he kind of dials down the Jim Carrey, he's capable of good performances. So, so is Ben Stiller. I've seen Ben Stiller act very effectively too. Like, and definitely Jack Black has a lot of range as an actor, but, I can't think. Tyler Perry is the only person I can think of who has created a character who has appeared like at that level of popularity in multiple films, of which I've seen none, but I hear they're good. And I understand that he's good, and I've seen him act in other contexts. Most recently, Don't Look Up, and he was excellent in that.
Steve Martin.
Yeah, well, Steve Martin played Clouseau, although I don't think he did a great job of it, to be honest.
Lily Tomlin.
Yeah.
But now we're actually like
these are like almost contemporaries. So do you think there's anything to the resemblance, or is it a coincidence?
Wow. I think it is a coincidence, though I also suspect that the reason that we are recording this mini-sode is that it is not a coincidence.
Huh. Wait, why do you're saying that I'm privy to some special?
Yes, yeah. I'm guessing that you have discovered something in the last 12 hours that we are about to unleash upon the upper middle brow
I have
audience.
discovered something, but it's not a rumor about but
you don't have some tape of like Steve Zaillian being like,
No, the thing I'll observe is that according to Steve Zaillian's Ripley, every single middle-aged man in Italy has a mustache. And every single middle-aged man, at least that we see in these kind of like southern parts of Italy, for the most part, are dark-haired. We know that there are blue-eyed, blonde-hair Italians in the world, but they don't. None of them make it into Zaillian. These are the swarthy Italians, right? And they're Latin and they're serious men with mustaches. Like, can you think of? I mean, do all the desk clerks have mustaches? Is there a desk clerk without a mustache? Maybe the first one.
No, the depressed one.
Yeah.
The depressed,
he's a younger
one.
Man, right?
He doesn't have a mustache.
Right.
And then the first one, he sort of plays as if he doesn't have a mustache, but then you're like, no, he has a very thin. He has a Van Dyke without the goatee, I believe.
Yeah,
which is just a pencil thin mustache, I guess.
I think so. Mustaches are very common. So I mean, and also like police inspectors are generally middle-aged men in this era too. So you get middle-aged man, dark hair, mustache. You're gonna, I mean. And then the fact that is that he is neither slender nor portly, just like Clouseau, so average build. You're going to get somebody who's sort of Clouseau-like. He does not wear the downturned hat that Inspector Clouseau shares with Inspector Gadget, who I'm sure was the inspiration for or Inspector Clouseau. But yeah, I think Inspector Clouseau was the inspiration for Inspector Gadget, not vice versa. The two sources that the show Inspector Gadget draw upon to me are Dr. No and Inspector Clouseau. It's like you merge James Bond and the Pink Panther, and you get Inspector Gadget.
I'll get you, Gadget. Right. Who came up with Claw, by the way? Who was like, you know what this villain is a chair?
Because like he. I mean, there is the moment where Gadget catches him and there's just an arm in a chair, but was it just an arm in a chair all along? Or did he get up and leave his decoy arm behind? It's giving a lot of, I think in the early James Bond, you never saw the top boss. You never saw Blofeld, right? You always saw, for a while.
You saw the cat.
You saw the cat, right? And so I think it's doing that too, right?
Yes.
Because you finally do see Blofeld, but there were several where agents of Spectre, also an acronym, are working for this mysterious boss. And so I think that's the inspiration for Dr. Claw, or whatever the head of Claw is.
Which is kind of amazing. I mean, because both the Pink Panther and Bond are parodies, basically. I mean, Bond used to be, Bond is like the perfect example of a parody that eventually went straight. Like, at some point along the way, the joke got minimized.
Right. I also think it also kind of started straight and then discovered this interest, but then it was because I haven't read the Ian Fleming novels, but I feel like the Ian Fleming novels were less tongue-in-cheek. But maybe from the very beginning. The first one was Dr. No. I've certainly seen Goldfinger and some of the Sean Connery ones, and Sean Connery is winking at us, and Roger Moore is really winking at us.
At us. You know what I'm going to do next? Right. Once I finish all this up, I'm going to go star in Cannonball Run.
Right, indeed, right. And Sean Connery is sort of like, well, I'm going to walk into this room and say something very sexual at this lady in a bathtub. Not from where I'm standing, positively shocking. And it's clear that he's in on the joke, and it's a fantasy, and it's just like, I mean, it's every 14-year-old male's fantasy. You're sneaking around with a gun, shooting people, and having lots of sex. And they know it, right? And they understand the fun part of that. But I want to get to my second question, and you've got camp coming up, and we've already gone a little bit long. So I'm going to just say coincidence or no. I'm going to say coincidence. And I didn't find Ravini's physical resemblance to Clouseau distracting. It's when again, we talked about this last time. There were moments that felt a little too campy, and most notably, Fozzie Ripley, which you know what? Again, I was listening to our episode, and you and I are speculating: is it meant to look clumsy? And I think it's just one of those moments of poor execution. It's the last. I do too. It's the last series. Everybody's tired. We've been working on it a long time. Andrew Scott comes back from the makeup department, and everyone's like, is it a little campy? It'll work, right? It'll work. Though they've got, come on. I mean, if the audience is still watching, we've got them, right? I mean, come on,
right? Yeah.
It's a long. Let's just do the shoot. Turn the light. That's what I think it was, and there was nobody willing to say, the Emperor's got a wig on. The Emperor has too much hair.
Everywhere.
Yeah, just a bit too much. So here's part two. I'm going to share something. I didn't have time to pull in the audio, so I'm going to play it into my mic, and you can hear it. So this is a podcast I enjoy, another review podcast called Crime Writers On. It's 4 crime writers, one of whom is also the head of podcasts at New Hampshire Public Radio, Rebecca Lavoie, who is kind of like my boss crush. Like, I would like her to be my boss. So So they did a recap of the Ripley series too, and they talk about a lot of different things. And she asked all 4 of them to reflect on the black and white, and then she shared what she thought. The people said different things. They said, it was effective in setting the mood, and it was effective in sort of establishing the era. But this was Rebecca's take.
But I think it also allows for some of the tricks you talked about. I mean, we have extended scenes of him just walking up and down stairs, right? To me, those scenes would be less visually. I mean, I like think of myself like thinking about when I was watching the scenes, I thought about what they meant while I was watching them in a way that I wouldn't in color, because in color, I think it would be clearer, like the sweat on his shirt. I think it would be clearer, like, what's his hair doing right now? I think it would be clearer, like, the color of the candle in the little niche, right? Like, who's lighting that candle? Like, I'd be thinking about more things in the shot instead of thinking about what is that shot? I mean, that shot is him climbing to Dickie's palace, right? Having to like climb all those stairs, figure out where he's going. And there's like so many stairs in this fucking movie. Like he's always going up. He's going up to the 3rd floor. He's going up to the 6th floor. His apartment in Rome is like up on it's like always up,
Yeah,
right?
it's symbolic.
Except after he's killed somebody, he's walking down. It's always like
his one
every
hotel
time
room down,
he does like a bad thing or is about to get caught, he's going down, and every time he's like aspirational, he's going up. It's like
it's like he's trying to see.
So basically, her hypothesis is the black and white simplifies the visuals and thus attenuates the watcher more to the symbolism, as opposed to sort of drinking in, say, Minghella version of this, where there's these wonderful palette of colors. And I thought that was a really interesting observation. And I'm curious what you think of it.
Yeah, I think it's a great and probably accurate interpretation. I've continued to, as I listened to our episode today, one thing that I was feeling like, a point I really wanted to make was that, and you and I have talked about this before, a trait of inexperienced writers is an over-reliance on metaphor, along with an abiding terror that the message still won't get through. And as I was thinking about the, to me, overwrought connection to Caravaggio, which is not in the book and simply seems to be there because all of the criticism of this show is, it's beautiful. It's as if Caravaggio was putting it together. And it makes me want to just be like, okay, so Steve Zaillian likes Caravaggio and was sort of shoehorning it in, and it results in something beautiful that I enjoy seeing the stills of. But if then all of that is simply in service, so like, okay, I'm obsessed with Caravaggio, I want this beautiful dramatic light, and as what's her name? What did you say her name is? Rebecca. So I think she's totally correct that it helps continue the symbolism. But if the imagery is built on something that isn't an actual part of the text, that I think is part of the thing that is contributing to my criticisms of this, is that so much of it seems to exist as I just wanted to do a cool, beautiful thing. Mm-hmm. And it loses the impact of the story. And you know what? Like, I think that's a little trite that after he does bad things, we see him heading downstairs a lot. Like,
well, I hadn't noticed that. So when she said that, I was
I hadn't either. So it's a very good observation.
Well, I mean, yeah, to me it would be trite if it were over obvious, and it wasn't. But it's, and I do have a defense of the Caravaggio thing too, which to me it's sort of like Tom assuming a kind of mantle. But leave that aside because you're almost out of time. I want to make one more point about the black and white that had not occurred to me until I heard Rebecca say this, these people have this discussion, which is black and white seems very old-fashioned to us. Like, why would we go back to black and white? But we're in the age of 12K video. Nobody in Hitchcock's time not Hitchcock, not Ingmar Bergman, not John Ford, had the technology to shoot black and white that looks like this. And actually, I can't think of a TV series that's shot in black and white that looks like this. So this particular iteration of maybe if you had 70 millimeter cameras in 1955 and like the best lenses and the best film, you could get a visual with the contrast and the texture that these visuals have. And to be clear, like I'm now doing a double interjection. I still think there's a quality that like 1990s and 80s color film has that I don't think digital has matched. I think there's different things you can do with digital cinema that might be equally good or equally interesting, but there's a veracity. When we were watching Eat, Drink, Man, Woman, we both noted the kind of there's a kind of hyper realism that actually comes from, I think, color film's slightly unreal quality. And maybe it's our age and when we grew up and we're used to seeing that. I don't know. But there's something about the way the light plays that digital technology hasn't really emulated. So I actually think visually Zaillian is doing exactly what he should be doing with digital technology, which is creating something new that we haven't seen before. I don't think we've ever seen this kind of high contrast black and white in an 8-part Netflix miniseries before. And also keep in mind, like Hitchcock and John Ford and Eisenstein also, maybe late in their careers, but for the most part didn't have access to widescreen. They mostly shot square, so the idea that we're getting these views on a 16.9 aspect ratio or 16:9 aspect ratio as opposed to a square, this is actually visually innovative. It's something new as opposed to something that is retro or recombined or looking backwards in a sort of sense. And I hadn't really put that together until I heard that discussion.
I agree with you. And I think it is like, I think so my continuing experience of this show is that it runs in 2 tracks for me. And on one side, the production values and the sound are astonishing. And then the narrative, and so my problem is like, okay, so there are these amazing production values that put us in mind of 16th and 17th century master painters. Steve Zaillian, maybe Steve Zaillian's like, oh shit, I've got this incredible technology. What does this look like? Oh, this looks like Caravaggio. And then we have the technology informing the metaphorical connection in the book in a way that it doesn't sync up
doesn't
to
work
me.
For you.
Like it feels put on in a way that I don't think has to be there, because I think Tom Ripley is more interesting as his own creation and not a simple descendant of Caravaggio because Caravaggio was brilliant and problematic and killed somebody in a duel. Like it feels a little bit, and we've talked about this before also, about like okay, there I am in college, and I'm like, I'm going to set.
I see what you're saying.
It's
kind of, you're giving Tom an idée fixe that he doesn't need. That Tom himself. And I see that point. It did not register that way to me. I like the Caravaggio duel scene in a way that you did not. Although I do feel like it's a little bit stranded in there.
Yeah.
But I still like it. It's weird. It's delightfully weird. I definitely love, my favorite Caravaggio moment are the 2 faces, the David and Goliath. I thought that, and to me that was organic. That's the kind of thing that Tom, the character, would have noted, and that's the kind of thing that Tom, the character, it would have stayed with him and become a profound metaphor. But we need to wrap up because you have work to do. So we'll see if Zaillian makes another Ripley series and we can continue this conversation. Clearly, I like it a little more than you do. Clearly, I have some of the same complaints. I was very delighted, that good old Malkovich was able to kind of win you onto the Ripley is fun side, at least for a few minutes. And
that scene is, just even listening to our episode, listening to that tape and listening to us. Yeah, that line. What do I do?
Yeah.
It's like,
why no?
Yeah. And that's the spirit.
Yeah.
That feels like Ripley.
Yeah.
And, and that is, and it all it was just this moment where I was like, man, just give it back to the actors. Like, you've got a great visual sense. You've got a great tool. You have a great sense of sound. You've got 2 absolute pros. You have 10 absolute pros. You have some very, very good actors. Just give it back.
2024 Bend Winter Community Theater, Chris Bagg, director, the talented Mr. Ripley. Give it to the actors. Give it to the actors. You were
makes my job easier.
Hey, black box, minimal props. You know, the odd like dresser. That's it.
Yeah, Angels in America.
Backdrop of a beach. Sometimes a backdrop of a beach, sometimes a backdrop of a villa, sometimes a backdrop of a museum. That's it. A desk, definitely a desk for the desk clerks, and you definitely want some prop service. You need some cufflinks, and you need some pen. You need an inkwell pen. You need all that. But I'm mindful of the time, so I'm here to tell you that Upper Middlebrow is a small point production. Chris Bagg and Jesse Dukes are in charge of hair and makeup. Music, or we should have been. Music by Ben Pajak and Jesse Dukes. Design and website by Chris Bagg. You can learn more about us and find our listener survey at uppermiddlebrow.com. Please review us in your podcast app so other people can find the show.
And as a reminder, Jesse and I are both writers and editors, and we can help you with your writing, podcasting, or editing project. You can see some of our portfolios and learn more at our respective websites, chrisbagg.com and, unsurprisingly, jessedukes.com. Thanks for listening, everybody.
And Chris Bagg is also available to direct your community theater play.
I'm available.
And we want to extend a special thank you to Rebecca Lavoie and the team at Crime Writers On. If you don't know their show, they review a lot of stuff, including movies, TV, other podcasts. You should check them out.